I typically am a very ordered person. I'm a very scheduled person. I like to do the same things at the same times each and every day, which is weird because as I've gotten older, I didn't realize that that was also going to mean me waking up at the crack of dawn on the one day a week I get to sleep in, and it's just so strange. But I feel off when I don't engage in my normal schedule, my typical schedule. I mean, I think I've always been like this, and my brothers certainly aren't scheduled. They're sloppy monsters, and they're all over the page. They're chaos, but I thrive in order. We have to know ourselves. We have to know how we best survive, how we best grow in this world. So, I'm adjusted to the seminary incredibly well, because the seminary is ordered. I mean, we have morning prayer at the same time and evening prayer at the same time, devotions at the same time, Mass at the same time, classes at the same time, apostolic work at the same time, meals and everything. And it all is so controlled and so ordered that we get used to that life. And then we get thrown out into the world. And if we can't see how we can reorder ourselves, how we need to be ordered in the world, life is going to be very difficult for all of us. I mean, I think the world is the same way. There's an inherent and intrinsic order that we as people of faith and as Catholics need to find and need to keep in our lives. I know when I get outside of my schedule, when things get a little bit messy, when things go a little bit awry, everything in me goes bonkers. My spiritual life is a mess. I feel like I tread water sometimes. I feel like I just am doing the bare minimum to try to get above the surface and grasp a breath. And it usually takes something big. It usually takes something big to jolt me in, to jolt me back, to bring me back to order, to bring me back to rightness. And I think it takes all of us a big jolt to come back. But that jolt in our lives, that return to order, is called confession. That is the great reordering of our entire lives. Our desires, our thoughts, our words, our deeds, our actions. In the sacrament of reconciliation, we find our souls being reordered to the divine so that we can do and live and be just as this gospel calls us to be, just as the book of Deuteronomy, the law of the Old Testament, calls us to be, ordered towards God, to love Him before all else, in heart, mind, and soul. And then from that, to love the world, to love our neighbor as ourselves. It's easy to look around and point out problems and point out issues. So we enter into that easiness. All of the problems of the world come from an inherent disorderedness. They come from people and us putting desires before the ultimate creation, the ultimate creator, before God. I mean, everything is so disordered when we have somebody worth $50 billion talking about our treatment of the poorest of the poor. Yet they don't lift a finger or a hand, most of Hollywood, to help out. When we have rich politicians who have never set foot in a Giant Eagle or in a Gabe's or in a discount store, yet they're the ones enforcing these crazy prices. They're the ones enforcing these crazy reforms to our social care system. Yet we wonder why things are out of whack. We wonder why men identify as women and vice versa, and we can just wake up one day and feel like I'm a goldfish. That's not order. That's chaos. That's chaos. That's evil. That's disorder. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't add to thriving. That doesn't add to living. Because we've lost focus on God in most of the world. Catholics are open to confession. We must go to confession. But the rest of the world, who are not bound by the laws of Catholicism, the laws of the Church, the rules of order, how do we get them back? How do we get them on the rails, again, of order? How do we get them, those who do not recognize God, or at least do not recognize the importance of God, how do we get them in line? How do we get them to love their neighbor? It is by our witness. that we do so. It is by our witness that we tell the world, show the world exactly who God is. Not by proselytizing. Proselytizing is done by angry yelling, by threats of violence. Proselytizing has never won God anyone for his church. In fact, it has pushed people away. Think of the angriest person we know about that works in the faith. That one weird cousin or aunt or uncle who is always yelling at Thanksgiving and ruining everything. We don't want to be like them, do we? Absolutely not. But we want to mimic and we want to find out the joy of somebody. That's intriguing for us. That's alluring for us. And that joy can only come from the correct order. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, we must make sure that we are living with an extreme joy, that we are living with an extreme orderedness that always has God as its focal point. Because with God as the focal point, the love of God can flow through all and out into the world and win souls for Him. They can restore souls to life that were once dead to sin, dead in the world. But it is witnessing we have to think about. How does our witness look? Does our witness look like preaching and talking against sins, but still being involved in them? Does our witness and thinking still look of saying, well, we should love God, but you know what, the Browns are on. I don't want to go to Mass right now because football's on. Or, man, Sunday's the only day I can go grocery shopping, wax the floors, mow the lawn, be away from everybody, and do all the things that are necessary. When our lives are even just a little bit out of order, it's going to affect everything else. It's going to ripple out and cause these giant problems down the road with our kids, our family, our friends no longer attending church, no longer being those witnesses that we need to form them to be in the domestic church in our homes. It all starts here, our witness. Our witness in the world all starts within the sanctuary. It all starts here at Mass. Lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi. The great philosopher and theologian Origen gave us that mighty principle. Lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi. The law of prayer affects the law of belief, which affects the law of life. The way we worship now will tell us and will inform the world about how we believe when we leave these walls, and will, in fact, give rise to how we live in this life. The law of prayer affects the law of belief, which affects the law of life. That when we enter into prayer, when we come into the corporate prayer of Mass, we enter with the utmost reverence to God. Not coming in dressed like we're ready to go to Cracker Barrel afterwards. Not coming in like we're just hurrying in from Walmart. Not like we're going to just go tailgating right afterwards. But we come ready for Mass, ready to worship, set apart, holy, ready to witness, ready to be fed, ready to have our minds and our hearts open to His mighty will who controls all. This is why we receive communion reverently, why we witness to the extraordinariness of God within us, of receiving Him within us. This is why we don't snatch Holy Communion like we're a claw machine. This is why we don't go back to our pew and then receive Holy Communion. That's why I think the most reverent way to receive Holy Communion is on the tongue. Because that is our ordinariness witnessing to the extraordinariness of God. Our Mass, this Mass, especially Mass here at Sacred Heart, is all about witnessing and venerating and having reverence for the awe-inspiring creation power of God. Our witness, our orandi, our prayer begins here so that we can go out and affect everything in life. Not by yelling, not by threats, not by violence, No Catholics ever blown themselves up in a building. No Catholics ever been successful evangelizing by the sword. No Catholics ever won a heart for Jesus Christ by screaming at their family members. The greatest saints have always just been with their brothers and sisters. And that is what we are called to do. We are not called to be with our brothers and sisters by just being us. We need to be us. We need to realize what natural gifts God's given us. But we are with our brothers and sisters by being that reflection of God made manifest, the God that we receive here, the God that we have to be in a state of grace to receive, the God that we live each and every day in Jesus Christ. It is up for us to meditate upon and up for us to reflect with how we have been those good witnesses. How do we come to church? How do I receive God? How do I think about receiving God? How do I pray after receiving God? And how do I let that, my prayer, my worship, inform my very being, my life? This is a matter of life and death, my brothers and sisters. Outside these walls, the world by itself offers death. It offers nothing. Everything passes away. It turns to ash. Fads go in and out of style. Hunger and thirst return. But inside of these walls, fed here at the table of the Lord, we will have the strength, the mercy, and the image of God to successfully be Him in this life and to greet Him for eternity. Here is life. Let us feed well. Let us witness.